Greetings, I'm Christopher Hildt, and this is Tales from the Hildt. Today we're reading the first chapter of Bad Company Chronicles, Volume 1, Forging a Company, from Book 1, Conflict at Creek Hollow. That's a little bit of mood music, but that apparently is just a bit too loud, so we're going to turn that down a bit, and we're just going to get right into it. That still might be a little too loud. Okay. Prologue. Falbar's Prologue. Now, normally we may just start with the first chapter, but each of the Chronicles starts with a Falbar's Prologue, so I'll read that a little bit first and then get into the first chapter. Greetings. My name is Falbar Alberin Taroth, and as your chronicler, I thought it best to begin my tales with a bit of an introduction. I live in the world known as Lenharrow, on the continent of Wayward. I was born in the city of Haven's Run, capital city of the nation of the same name. My parents, David and Wanda Taroth, own and operate the famous chain of inns known as 4-Star Falbars. In case you hadn't noticed, my name appears in the title of our inn. Well, I am named after my grandfather, who, along with his brother, became two of the most well-known heroes in Wayward. After they became famous, my grandfather settled down and opened his first tavern in the fabled city of Dwardale. My great-uncle, however, went on to become known as the Great Sage, and until most recently he was the greatest seer and wisest man this world has ever known. Sadly, age finally caught up to my beloved uncle and mentor. My parents decided that because of the great success of my grandfather's inn, that they would expand, and did so with exceptional success. Currently, there are 5 inns that share the name of 4-Star Falbars across the land. My 2 uncles and 2 aunts on my father's side manage the other businesses for my parents. As for how I became born in Haven's Run, well, let's just say my parents grew attached to the citizens of this great city. Like my parents, one day I will own the family business. But unfortunately, my heart lies elsewhere. Like my great-uncle, I have a great love of poetry and mirth, and like him, I begin my adventuring career as a minstrel. I hope to one day make him proud of the path I have chosen. Life is kind of funny, and history has a way of repeating itself. One day a nobleman by the name of Clayton Bridges entered the lives of my family, as he is the owner of the largest brewery in the land. His young son, Deehawn, who was 4 years my senior, was a wild and rebellious teenager who took it upon himself to defend me from the local bullies. Dee, as we affectionately call him, was dealing with the disappearance of his favorite uncle, Mirbin, and sought to relieve his frustrations while adventuring, much to the chagrin of his father. Our 2 families have grown very close, and he has been like a big brother to me, as I was an only child, and his younger sister Jacqueline is even younger than me. One day, Dee informed me that he must go away, and that his father was sending him to live with his eldest brother and Dee's uncle, Tiberius Bridges, a respected nobleman and the commander of some special watch in the dwarven home of Dwardale. The word home is dwarvish and has many meanings: clan, realm, and as it sounds in common, home. But in this instance, it is referring to the kingdom. Deehawn would be living in the capital city of Dwardale, and did not know when he would return. My great-uncle Hebador needed only to see my friend once to tell me that my destiny and that of Deehawn Bridges were interwoven. I learned all I could from Hebador, but as we are mortal men, his day eventually came. After his passing, I felt a great loss, and I knew he was fond of me, but I had no idea that he had left all of his possessions solely to me. I would not know this until my 15th year had passed, and as it was his wish that my parents not allow me to have my inheritance before then. On that day, on my birthday, my parents informed me of Hebador's wishes, and I received his great scrolls of wisdom, as well as several other heirlooms. But there was one scroll in particular that my parents told me my great-uncle wanted me to read first. I took it to my room, and with a trembling yet excited hand, I unrolled it, and looked upon Hebador's parting words to me. Salutations, young Falbar. As you had helped me through my final years in this our world, it is my proud yet sad duty to inform you that your destiny shall be etched in the annals among the great, yet, like me, you shall seem but a passenger upon the road. Start with Deehawn Bridges. He is the link to the door that will broaden your horizons. He has the potential to become a great man and leader. Many will be your trials, but among the mighty you will stand one day. It will begin with 7 hearts brought together by fate. It is a fate you shall share, my lad. Do not fear your destiny, for a man that runs from destiny also runs smack dab into fate. Be true to your friends, and they in turn will be true to you. I have filled your head with much wisdom for one so young. Learn from your mistakes, and above all, trust yourself. Only one more piece of advice need I give you. Hearken to my writings, especially those concerning the bad company, as that is what you and your allies shall be called. Do not fear that which you read, and remember that at one time I was where you are now. Farewell, Falbar, Albert, and Tiroth. My heart goes with you, and my spirit shall always guide you. Last writing of Hebedor Tiroth, the great sage. Somewhat taken aback, there I was, a young and simple aspiring minstrel with a terrible burden placed upon my shoulders. Bad company? The sound of it brought chills to my spine. I began reading all that I could of Hebedor's writings. And of them there were a great deal. Ironically, and shortly after Hebedor's passing, Deehawn had returned from Dwardelf. He and I had already rekindled our friendship, and although he had taken up service with our young sovereign, he still made time for me. These are my chronicles of the bad company. I begin with the only part I can, before we all came together. I'm not saying we are the best of friends, or that the world will look fondly upon the mark we make upon it, but I have sworn to be their scribe, so without further ado, I begin the tale that I have entitled Forging a Company. Book 1, Conflict at Creek Hollow. Chapter 1, Deehawn Bridges and his Wayward Scout. Date: Colin 32. Harvest 10:51 M 6:55. Now, in the back of the book we have an appendix that goes over how all the calendar works and all the days of the week and time and all that stuff. And that would be Appendix A in the back. The world is called Lenharrow, and the continent of interest is known as Loair, but at the moment we mean to discuss matters of a more personal nature, namely Deehawn Bridges. The man was born in the world-renowned city of Haven's Run, renowned due to the great gnome healers in their temple of Doc, the god of healing, health, and pretty much anything else to do with the mortal body. His given name is Deehawn Bridges, or just D to his friends. At 22 years old, he is now a respectable nobleman that has earned the title of Lord Major and has accepted a commission from Archduchess Shazaren Dameron as defender of the realm of Haven's Run's trade and commerce. He is now referred to as Her Majesty's Trade Commissioner. Archduchess Shazaren, our sovereign monarch, is a beautiful ginger, almost rust-colored, catwoman noble, and she is the unquestioned ruler of Haven's Run. Other nations refer to her as the Queen, but she has rejected this title and prefers the one she inherited from her father. Her father Dameron had achieved such great status in life that he was called upon by the Great One, father of all the gods, to act as his herald. So in a way he has passed on, yet Shazaren can still go to him for advice. Haven's Run is a small nation nestled between many others. To the north is our allied nation of Firewolf, and to the south is another ally, the nation of Dordell. At one time all 3 of these nations were one and the same, a part of Dordell, but times dictated that each should split. They are now called the 3 Kingdoms, which are predominantly Dwarven. Both Firewolf and Dordell are ruled by Dwarven kings, but Shazaren's father attained great status under the banner of a previous king of Dordell, and was bequeathed the lands known as Haven's Run. To the east are 2 formidable wildlands that are most definitely inhospitable. They are called the Plains of Death and the Lion's Stretch, 2 vast stretches of inhospitable lands separated by the Black Sharp Mountains and the Great Gripping Desert to the east. To the southeast and directly south of the Lion's Stretch is the nation of Moreno, which is ruled by a kind and generous king of human descent, and those that dwell in his nation are predominantly human. Finally we turn to the west and the great forested nation of Hytar. This elven nation has seen much turmoil in recent years and has fallen under the control of a powerful dictator named Zagal. This former rebellious prince was known as the Bandit King, but that title has fallen to another, who, it is rumored, still employs such individuals, but has also enlisted the aid of the powerful sorcerer known as Sket Road and the former High Magus of the previous benevolent elven king. Together they overthrew the long-time and now deceased King Sorenthal. Overthrew is perhaps too strong a word, as he was appointed by their royal council, and actually coronated king, crowned king. Elven politics, but I digress. As you can guess, Sorthal and Zagal were blood related, but Zagal was not heir to the throne. Rumors abound, but it is said that he has slain all of Sorthal's subsequent heirs, but only time will tell on that score. Now that sets the stage and gives you the major players in the lands that surround Haven's Run, but this story is about Deehawn Bridges, and you can imagine he has the look of a great hero. He's a bearded man that stands at 6 feet tall, has neatly trimmed short black hair and keen blue eyes. He is a good man that tries to be helpful to those in need. He is merciful to those that deserve it and prides himself in his courage. That is great indeed. Finally, he is very perceptive and can usually spot falsehoods, but generally uses his perceptiveness as a means of helping those he works with deal with their problems as well as conflicts with others. That is perhaps his greatest strength, even though physically he is incredibly strong and highly agile. These two attributes make him an excellent champion swordsman. He has rarely taken ill throughout his life and is generally well liked by all who have met him. He has a keen intellect but an even greater insight, which serves him well in his current position. You would think that someone of such great character grew up that way, but in fact, at one time, he had it in his heart to wander the world without a care, and had fallen in with a wild and savage young man calling himself Freddie Gruber. The two became inseparable and were quite rebellious, rude, and were seemingly uncontrollable. After a mysterious but obviously terrible incident, and in desperation, his father sent his struggling teenager to live in Dwarnov with his brother. Deehawn's uncle Tiberius knew just how to handle such rebels, as he had been the instructor at Dwarnell's military academy. He took Deehawn under his wing and taught him many things. Among them, discipline, honor, respect, and oh yes, even more swordsmanship, all of which he excelled at. After only just 2 years in Dwarnov and with his training complete, Deehawn returned home a man. Freddie Gruber's fate was unknown to the young nobleman, and the younger Lord Bridges believed that his friend was dead, so was unfortunately unable to take up that friendship again. Deehawn took service with the Archduchess and became an officer of the guard. In no time at all, he showed great promise and joined the personal entourage of the Trade Commissioner. Beardlin Stonehammer was a great dwarf that had served the Archduchess faithfully, as he had done her father for many years. Unfortunately, on the first outing with Bridges, Beardlin was struck down by several trolls, while he and his entourage attempted to defend a local village. What at first seemed like a bandit attack upon a small remote village of Torrent turned into a bloodbath. They were well organized and struck with hard against the line of defenders, killing Beardlin because he was the obvious leader. Bridges was forced to take command, and the village was overwhelmed. Unfortunately for the trolls, this was the young lord's day to shine, as he rallied his beleaguered troops and joined them with the local watch. Having fought trolls before during his training in Dwarnov, Deehawn ordered his men to light torches and shoot flaming arrows. The fighting lasted for many hours, and at one point Bridges' forces were driven into the surrounding forest. As if by chance, he came upon a teenage boy defending his 2 younger brothers, and although he struggled valiantly, the youth was no match for 5 full-grown trolls. Deehawn ordered the attack and set upon the 5 trolls with a barrage of fiery arrows, and then stepped in with his swordsmen and cut them all down. The 3 boys were saved, and Lord Bridges kept them under guard throughout the rest of the battle. At length he managed to rally his forces and drive the remaining enemies from the village of Torrent. They were given a hero's feast and honored by the surviving villagers. In truth, Deehawn discovered that the town would have fallen if not for the valiant efforts of a local couple named Tybuck and Linda, Sharon McAllister. Their efforts saved the town and allowed Bridges the time he needed to rally the defenders and drive the forces of darkness from the village. Unfortunately, the 2 brave heroes were killed in the final assault, and it was discovered that the 3 young boys Deehawn had saved were their children. He stayed in Torrent for several days and grew very close to the 3 young McAllisters. Clint, Mitch, and Eric. It was never any question for him, and he decided at once that he would become their guardian and take them back to Haven's Run with him. When reinforcements arrived, he was called back to the capital city, where he was honored by the Archduchess and granted the title of Lord Major. Additionally, he was named the Trade Commissioner and given command of Lord Stonehammer's entourage. Recognizing a rebellious streak in young Clint McAllister, Bridges took the teenager under his wing, as his uncle had done for him, and started teaching him the ways of combat. After a few short years had passed, Clint, although still rebellious, became a respected member of Deehawn's entourage as well as his chief scout. The younger two McAllisters, although less rebellious, took to careers as well. Even though Eric, the youngest of the three, was only 14, he seemed likely to make an excellent scout as well. Clearly wanting to be like his eldest brother, desperately. Bitch, desiring to be his own man, however, decided on a different course of study and is training with the Bounty Hunters Guild to be an infiltrator. Deehawn's father warned him not to set the two younger brothers to the hazard at so young an age, and for once the two agreed. Despite their constant urging of him, the younger Lord Bridges has yet to let them join in any bandit hunts. But Clint cannot ever be swayed. He is impulsive and sometimes hard to control, but deep down Deehawn knows that Clint is a good man. Deehawn had many friends in his life. Among them was Falbar Taroth, a young minstrel that always seemed to have trouble fending off bullies, and that included one rascally Clint McAllister. But Bridges had always liked him and did his best to protect that promising young man. Their families had been friends for many years, and you might say that Falbar is Deehawn's only childhood friend, although he's 4 years older than the minstrel, making Falbar and Clint the same age. While living in Dwardown, Bridges befriended a noble dwarf named Deehawn Rockbeard, a cousin of Kieran Rockbeard, the current king of Dwardown. They shared a great love of ale, and found that after a couple of pints and a good conversation, the life's troubles were never as bad as they seemed. Deehawn had promised to visit Haven's Run as soon as he could, but that was some time ago, and Deehawn believes that perhaps he might never see his dwarven friend again. So like his missing friend Freddy, he feels that he and the dwarf are perhaps not meant to be adventuring companions, as he had always believed of both of them. Falbar, on the other hand, had become a dear friend for many reasons, but mostly because of the fact that he sure drew a crowd of ladies, and the Lord Major liked women. A lot. Falbar also had other attributes, and had requested to join Bridges' entourage shortly after the minstrel's 18th birthday. Deehawn had no reason to deny his friend, and thought that it couldn't hurt to have a minstrel along. Now, if he could just learn how to use a broadsword, he wouldn't be half bad. Recently, the trade commissioner and his entourage, and this most definitely included Clint McAllister, had been scouring the woods northeast of the city for reports of bandits attacking the roads, and once again his wayward son had gone off on his own and was scouting away southward. This didn't sit well with the Lord Major at all, and he camped in the old abandoned guard tower known as Road Watch. They had been forced to clear out the old tower of a rusty bunch of Jacols, a corrupted race of Jacobin who had been wreaking havoc on local travelers. A small group of nasty goblinoids had escaped, so while Bridges and the bulk of his entourage were wrapping things up in the watchtower, Corporal McAllister, Dee's young ward, had taken it upon himself to lead a squad of soldiers in pursuit of their foes. That was on the previous evening, but as the dawn broke, heralding the morn, as of yet there had been no word of them. "Something to wake you, my lord?" a dwarven soldier asked the trade commissioner. Bridges groggily nodded and gratefully accepted the steaming mug presented to him. After a hearty sip, he looked up at the dwarf and smiled broadly. "Thank you, Sergeant Major, just the way I like it." "Cocoa with a touch of Bridges ale, sir. I know," the dwarf responded warmly with a grin. "You know me too well, Corsall," the Major responded fondly. "I do my best, my lord." "Better than most," the trade commissioner complimented him warmly, but then became serious. "Any word?" "Most of my scouts have reported in," he informed the Major at once, "and it seems that there was a troll among the Jacols." The Lord Major began inaudibly. "That explains it." The dwarf glanced at him curiously, so he elaborated. "McAllister hates trolls, with a passion." "I see." Deehawn shook his head slightly. "I doubt it. Some trolls killed his parents." Corsall nodded, so the commissioner continued. "That's how he came to be my ward." His eyes wandered and glanced towards the main doors of the road watch, and then back to his subordinate. The dwarf simply nodded and said, "Understood." Just then an elven soldier entered the watchtower. "Majors," he stated suddenly, caught off guard, clearly attempting protocol, but was momentarily flustered in the presence of his sergeant major and the lord major. "Don't forget the sergeant part, Windfall," Corsall joked with him. "At ease, Minor," Bridges ordered the elf at once, addressing him by rank. "Report." "My lord," he began with a nod and steadied himself. "I led my squad south and east and found several dead Jacols and some troll's ash. Apparently it had a lost limb, and one of the corporal's squad had burned it. McAllister is well versed in dealing with trolls," Bridges informed him. "Continue." "We continued southward and tracked our men deeper into the woods, where we came upon the corporal's squad as they approached us. Private Daniels informed me that McAllister had ordered them to return to road watch and report in. What about the corporal? The sergeant major inquired. The elf nodded. I was getting to that. Corsal's face grew cross, and he would have responded. Easy, Hawkins, Bridges ordered the dwarf, as clearly he had taken the elf's remark as somewhat snide and a little insubordinate. Then he turned back to the miner. Go on. The corporal squad had run into the rest of the Jacols and the troll. After a rough fight, and with several of them being injured, they slew the remaining Jacols, but the troll fled once more. McAllister then ordered their retreat with a message for the Lord Major. The trade commissioner nodded to him to elaborate, and with a slight nod he swiftly did so. The corporal said to inform you that he'd run the Dithilvackle down and report back to the capital by week's end. It was at this point that I ordered both squads back here. I had the wounded report to the medic, and then rushed here. Then you, Windfall, Bridges said to the elf with a nod, dismissed. The two leaders watched the squad leader swiftly depart in silence for a moment. Arrogant little Corsall started to grumble. Clint's always been a little headstrong. Not the corporal, he responded, taken somewhat aback. Mayor on Windfall. He's a cocky little Magenheimer. Deehawn chuckled suddenly. He's just being Elvin. Corsall looked at the Lord Major sternly and responded, I know. There was a moment of stoic silence, and then they both burst into laughter. After a mirthful instant, the dwarf shrugged. What's our next move? Bridges sighed and frowned. I hate it, but for now we let him play his hand. McAllister is on his own. What about the indications of a larger group of running these Jacols? Deehawn shrugged his shoulders and then nodded. We report back to the capital as planned, and wait for McAllister to report in. Hopefully, after he runs his troll down, he might have some news for us. He's a good scout, the sergeant major offered. He always goes above and beyond. I know, Bridges mused. That's what worries me, and I'd like nothing better than to go after him myself. He trailed off and sighed again. But, the sergeant major wondered of him. I have other obligations at the moment, the Lord Major responded shortly. Understood, the dwarf said with a nod. You want me to send some men after him? No, they just get in his way. That's why he sent his squad back to road watch. He thought about it for a moment. He knows the protocol. He's got 2 days to check in. Corsall nodded. And in the meantime? We break camp and head for home, the Lord Major responded at once as he stood up. What about road watch? We'll leave a platoon here, and I'll recommend to the Captain General that we have a garrison permanently stationed here. She'll just love that, the dwarf mused with a grin. And your other obligations? Deehawn nodded again. That's another matter altogether, and something of a civilian issue. He put his hand on the sergeant major's shoulder and smiled. It involves a tavern, and hopefully a delightful yet mundane distraction from the day-to-day. He smiled once more. Let's get underway. I'll see it done, the dwarf assured him as he too left swiftly, leaving the trade commissioner alone with his thoughts. 2 days had come and gone. Falbar Taroth, Major Bridges' childhood friend, had requested Deehawn's presence at 4-Star Falbar's Inn and Tavern. It was a special night for the young minstrel, and he was quite nervous. The inn, which was owned and operated by his parents, David and Wanda, was packed, something Deehawn noted as he settled into a table next to Wanda and Wanda Taroth. She smiled at him in greeting. She had long red hair that was braided neatly, and she had a lithe form. She was taller than her husband, who was busy serving drinks, because he enjoyed doing so, and tonight Deehawn was offering a round of Bridges' ale on him. Wanda looked upon the innkeeper fondly and watched as he brushed his short yet dark brown hair out of his face, but then turned to look back upon the stage. It is a common thing in Loair to listen to tales told and sung by minstrels. The night marked the debut performance of young Falbar, who hoped to follow the footsteps of his famous grandfather, whom he was named after. He had looked forward to this moment his entire life, having studied under some of the best performers and minstrels from far and wide, including his granduncle, the great sage and seer known as Hebador. Not surprisingly, the tall young man of 6'2" had a handsome face adorned with feathery brown hair and piercing blue eyes. He is somewhat nervous, but after only a moment's hesitation, and a perfectly strummed note upon his lute, he began. Hearken to me, all ye assembled, he called to the crowd as he looked out at the large number of patrons and swallowed hard before continuing. I am Falbar Alberin Taroth. As many of you know well, And tonight I shall sing to you a ballad, nay, a prophecy, which I learned from the great Saint Heminor himself. 'Tis the ode of the bad company. The crowd quieted down, waiting as the minstrel paused momentarily, and with that, as well as another perfectly strummed, with that as well as another perfect strum on his lute, he started to sing with a voice both fair and strong. Now, I am not going to sing, but I will read this. Long ago, afore the world was wrought, 'twixt twain evil fiends a pact was forged. Eternally these two had fought, hungrily upon all life the two had gorged. In order for them each to sate their need, and end they made of their quarrel, foulest of the two would be the seed of the 7 fiends that would unfurl. Slyest of the pair would in the earth retreat, to rest his frame in the deepest sleep. As per their bargain, never again would they meet. Slumber they would have until they awoke to reap. The slyest one will sleep until upon the moon the raven's wing should suddenly cross. 10 brave souls will seemingly swoon. By ballad's end his frame will toss. Toss and turn at minstrel's song. Death will come and wake the foulest one. The 6 and 4 will lay the thong. An unseen hand will make him run. But in the end remorse will creep. His hand the 10 shall know. After death both fiends will seep into the halls of woe. Bad company forged in blood, death will they deny. Upon the river Styx they'll brood, at last upon the road they fly. To Dwardale they arrive, King's aid will they spark. Dwarven nations shall come alive, bringing light once more unto the dark. Falbar hung his head solemnly. There was a bit more to his song that he could not yet reveal, so he hoped that this would be enough for now. The room grew deathly quiet, as the crowd had not yet realized the song was done. At first he feared that his first performance may have bombed, but it only took the audience a moment before they understood. Falbar smiled as the crowd erupted in cheers and whistles, especially from the many ladies present. Thank you one and all, Falbar said to them happily. Sing us another song, Falbar, a spectator shouted at him. The crowd looked at Falbar expectantly, and he seemed taken aback. Yeah, sing some more, another onlooker cheered. His voice is most fair. I would like to hear more as well, a tall and veiled-faced catwoman noble said to her likewise tall and veiled-faced wolf-woman friend as she winked at Falbar. Yes, another song, the crowd prompted him. Falbar looked at the crowd nervously. He managed weakly, as he was overjoyed as well as overwhelmed. The crowd continued to shout, Song! Song! And poor Falbar was at a loss, something he would most probably never be again in front of an audience. But suddenly the crowd turned to the voice of a nobleman. Folks, Deehawn Bridges called to them, I believe our young minstrel has done well for his first solo, and to celebrate, I offer you another round, compliments of Bridges Breweries. The crowd erupted in cheers, and many shouted, Hooray! Expectantly, David Taroth was already pouring ale into many cups, as he could find. The crowd rushed up to the bar, while Dee quietly walked towards Falbar. Lord Bridges put his arm around his friend's shoulders. Thanks for the save, Dee, Falbar said to his friend with a sense of relief flowing through him. What are friends for? Bridges responded coyly. He led Falbar out of the tavern quickly as he said, Come on, let's slip out the stage door and get you out of here before the crowd realizes that you're gone. The two had barely gotten 5 feet after passing through said door when a voice stopped them cold. Leaving without us? A sultry female voice demanded of them. They turned to see the tall forms of the veiled catwoman and her wolfwoman companion. Show's over, ladies, Deehawn said to her firmly. For me, the catwoman began as she pulled her veil aside, the show is over when I say it is. Your Majesty, Lord Bridges blurted, then bowed respectfully. Falbar immediately knelt down next to him and bowed. On your feet, dummy, the wolfwoman scolded the minstrel as she pulled him back up straight. You're lucky the street is empty, and you did not draw a crowd. Indeed, Chazerne continued, her friend's scolding manner as she playfully patted him on the rump. The minstrel blushed and looked to his friend pleadingly. Don't look at me, Lord Bridges informed with a shrug. Oh, I'm looking at you, the wolfwoman insisted as she put both of her hands on the trade commissioner's shoulders. Captain General, he responded nervously. Have no fear for your virtues this night, my friend, Chazerne said to them soothingly. Tonight I simply hunger for some more of that glorious singing. I do have a banquet hall, and I'm certain my mother would like to hear Falbar's voice as well, the Lord Major offered his friend up suddenly. Hey, the minstrel grumbled. That sounds splendid, the Archduchess said to them warmly, as the two larger ladies began escorting the two young men through the mid-gate and entered Hightown. As they strode beyond the gateway, she cooed in the minstrel's ear. Only a couple of songs, mind you. I have an early morning meeting, but fear not. I do still owe you a birthday present, and I'll be sure to take good care of you soon enough. With that, their sovereign monarch giggled mischievously, which caused her three companions to laugh mirthfully, as well as they headed towards Bridges Manor for the after-party. Life is sometimes fortuitous for some, like Falbar, but for others, like Clint McAllister, life often seems to just get all complicated. As his mentor and Falbar were exiting the tavern, he finds himself miles away and crouching down in a wooded area looking at a small cave in a hillside. He's taken it upon himself to scout for bandits in the woods east of the capital city. Naturally, that was after he'd run down a nasty troll who'd led into a group of said bandits. He'd been hell-bent on the troll, stabbing him through the heart. He swiftly poured oil over his fallen foe and hadn't seen the bandits that were in stunned silence all about him. This wasn't a problem, but sometimes Clint could just be a little overzealous. With a torch in his offhand, he set his foe ablaze and smiled at his handiwork. It was then that he became aware of his little audience. Clint doused the torch and casually brushed back his wiry and untamed dirty brown hair, and looked about himself with sharp brown eyes. He stood up straight to his full height of 5'11". "Oh, hello," he began, and before any of them had known he had drawn a second sword, a short sword to match the long sword in his right hand. He made swift work of 4 of them, causing the other 6 to bolt in multiple directions. After seeing him kill a troll, and then 4 of their own in the blink of an eye, they wanted no part of a fight with this man. He ran them all down each in turn, and made quite the sport of it. The last one had given him a merry chase, and after putting him to the sword as well, he found himself miles to the south, and much farther afield than probably he should have been by himself. Putting up his blades, he searched the outlaw's corpse and found a small cloth crest crumpled at his head. It bore a shallow peak with a setting sun, and he recognized it at once. As per his usual, the situation had just become severe, or fun, as he likes to think. A noise drew his attention, so he turned suddenly to find 2 bandits standing behind him. "What have we got here?" the first bandit asked his companion. "Looks like sport to me," the second bandit replied as he looked down at the corpse the soldier stood over. Clint looked up at both of them with a big cheese grin on his face. "Agreed," he said to them boldly. The 2 bandits looked at him in surprise as the young McAllister reached for his longsword and swiftly pulled it free of its sheath. Both bandits were completely shocked as Clint slashed them across their midsections. Instinctively, Clint turned to find 4 more bandits rushing towards him, so he drew out his short sword with his left hand once more. "Hey!" one of them shouted at him. But one of the other bandits had assessed the situation more clearly. "Haven's Run scout! Kill him!" he shouted to his allies. Clint stabbed 2 of the bandits so fast that the other 2 barely had time to react. But even though he is an exceptionally skilled swordsman, trained by a master, the odds just might be against him this time. Lord Major Bridges had taught him considerably more than swordplay over the past few years, but at the moment it's all he gives a damn about as Clint blocked one of the bandit's sword strokes with his longsword, while he stabbed the other with his rapidly drawn short sword. He definitely had taught young McAllister well as he ran the 4th bandit through, but several more approached from a cave opening. "It seems I've found a nest," Clint mused mirthfully. The obvious leader of the bandits called out to his men, "Cut that man down!" Deehawn never had a more apt pupil, and he has never seen anyone as fast and deadly with a sword than Clint McAllister, with maybe the exception of his younger brother Eric. But even as skilled as he is, he knows that against so many men, even he would be overwhelmed. Besides, there was no telling the extent of this bandit cluster, seeing as how he'd recognized the leader's face from a wanted poster his brother Mitch had. He was an outlaw nobleman from the East, often referred to as the current Bandit King. The bandit leader spurred his men on as they charged past him. "Don't let him get away," he ordered them. The bandit leader watched his men spread out as a gray-skinned elf dropped down behind him. "Problems, my lord Dredge?" the elf asked the bandit leader. Dredge turned and looked at his ally with a scowl. "A scout from Haven's Run just found our hideout. See to it that he doesn't live an hour longer." As you wish, my lord. Daggett the Black has ever been at thy beck and call, he responded darkly. Dredge pointed into the woods as Daggett leapt upwards into the trees. Just go, you lousy. Gone, Daggett assured his leader. Deep elves, Dredge muttered under his breath. Clint jumped into the woods, then hid behind some bushes, and watched several bandits rush past him. He smiled as he darted away from the area in the opposite direction and towards the sounds of flowing water. From the trees, Daggett looked down as Clint ran beneath him and thought musingly to himself, He's quite skilled, but I'm better. The deep elf silently leapt from tree to tree above Clint and then down upon him suddenly. Clint skillfully turned and deflected Daggett's short sword attack. The two warriors clashed swords repeatedly as they neared the powerful drawn-on river. Seemingly equally skilled in the art of swordplay, they continued to hound one another, but in the end, Daggett kicked Clint in the head and then rapidly cut him across the chest, forcing the scout to fall backwards and into the river. In combat, experience will almost always win out, but as the deep elf swiftly discovered while minding a wound that he hadn't even realized Clint had made, sometimes more experience also breeds overconfidence. Daggett licked his own blood off his fingertips, smiling triumphantly, as he casually stepped back into the woods, thinking his prey dead. However, not far downstream, should the deep elf have bothered to look, he would have seen Clint gasping for air as he popped up out of the river and grabbed hold of an overhanging tree branch. The determined young man pulled himself onto the riverbank and rolled onto his back. Somehow he'd managed to sheath both of his swords and swim back to the riverbank. Thankfully, his chainmail had taken the brunt of the damage, he noted, as he clutched his wounded torso and then immediately passed out. And that is the end of Chapter 1. Chapter 2 is entitled Journey to Haven's Run, and perhaps one day I'll read that one too. But I think this video has gone on far long enough, and I hope you enjoyed it. Like I said, there's a few appendices in the back. One is calendar time. The other is a bestiary of some of the monsters that are encountered in the book. And the final one is just a little one-page thing about how to swear in Dwarvish, which I covered all that in my Forging a Company video. So I hope you enjoyed this reading and Tales from the Hildt. With that being said, Logan out.